The land is green.
Welcome to this week's edition of the program, Agricultural Biotechnology in Focus on Vision 92.1 FM Abuja. My name is Ifeanyi Ugoke. Agricultural Biotechnology in Focus is a program designed to educate you on benefits of agricultural biotechnology. On this edition of the program, our topic of discussion is there any need for Nigeria to modify her crops? To do justice to the topic, I have as my guest Professor Emmanuel Hala Kwondong. He is the National President of Genetics Society of Nigeria. He is also a professor of plant genetics and breeding from the Department of Botany, Federal University, Lafia, Nasarawa State. Prof, it's a pleasure having you on the program. Many people are not well informed about this technology. As an expert in the field of genetics, in simple terms, what is genetic modification of crops?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ifeanyi. When we talk of genetic modification, it is a very simple terminology in science. It's a result of a laboratory process where genes, they are extracted from one species, from the DNA of one species. Now, when we talk of DNA, a layman will also be confused. DNA is simply the deoxyribonucleic acid. That's the component of the genetic material that is responsible for inheritance from one generation to the next. So when we talk of the genes, the gene is mainly made up of the DNA, which is the deoxyribonucleic acid, and is the component in the nucleus of any organism that is responsible for inheritance from one generation to the next. So, in simple terms, genetic modification is where this DNA is extracted from one species to another species. And scientifically, the process of genetic modification is responsible for the movement of genes either from one species to the same species or from one species to a different species. So it is possible to remove DNA from one plant kingdom and transfer it to another plant kingdom, or even to remove DNA from a plant kingdom into an animal kingdom. So the process of genetic modification is just a kind of replacement of what happens in nature, in the laboratory. But again, it must be clearly stated that the process does not come with any complications.
To take us further, what are the benefits of genetic modification of crops to farmers and Nigeria at large?
Now, what comes to mind is, why do you even go on genetic modification? In another way, that question can be reframed in that form. And it is simple. The process of plant breeding or animal breeding requires laborious timing. When I'm talking of timing now, when you want to cross one plant or to remove pollen, for example, in a plant, and transfer it to the stigma of the same plant or another plant, it's a very simple process, and that is what happens in nature. And you could take for some particular plants a periods that range from 3 months to 1 year, or even in perennial crops, several years, to be able to engage that transfer process. Now, in genetic modification, you limit the timing of the transfer. You do not have to wait for the process, the normal process of transfer of pollens during the normal cropping season, but you can reduce the time as a result of removing the genes and then transferring it. So you have saved time. And such saving of time could imply that you are able to attract to yourself the benefit of saving the time it will take you to breed a particular plant or a particular animal. The gestation period of a particular animal will be used to be able to determine how long, if you are doing a normal fertilization, for you to get offsprings. Now, when you are transferring genes, you reduce the timing. That's one major advantage. Then, second advantage, there are particular traits or what we consider as challenges in breeding. For example, we could be interested in transferring genes that will protect plants from pests or diseases. Now, in the process of normal cross-pollination, you may not be able to target any genes that are responsible for protecting that plant against that resistance. In genetic modification, however, you have the advantage of transferring specific genes that are responsible for protecting the plant against the pests. So you have been able to address that challenge. In another time, you could also be addressing a drought tolerance. Now, drought tolerance is a very important trait in breeding plants because it means you will have to plant your crops in areas where you have limited water supply. Then all that you require in genetic modification is to look for those genes that are responsible for the drought tolerance and remove them from the plants that have the genes for drought tolerance to those plants that don't have. You now confer that resistance to the plants. So in that simple way, you have been able to avoid the laborious process of planting the crops under different conditions, and then you go on to select those that are resistant to the drought or not through different kinds of conventional techniques. And then you could also have other traits that you are interested in. Maybe you are interested in increasing the yield. You just go to a particular gene that is responsible for the increased yield, and then you remove it and transfer it. Currently, there are experiments in the field that are also interested in the nitrogen use efficiency of crops. In that case, you remove those genes that confer those crops with a kind of ability to produce more using less amount of nitrogen. That means you are now getting on with production of crops that you will not require much fertilizer. So you are saving the farmer the cost of fertilizer just through a gene that will make those crops to grow in an environment where you use very little fertilizer, little or no fertilizer, and then they will still produce the yields that they would have produced under minimum or optimum fertilizer application. So these are some of the advantages and benefits of the genetic modification.
We go on short break. After the break, we continue with the program.
Are you worried about the high import bill on food? Does Nigeria have the potential to produce enough food for her citizens?
This technology has come to offer major solutions to agricultural productivity in Nigeria.
Rising on the low level of awareness and understanding of modern biotechnology among Nigerians, the anti-GMO activists have turned an otherwise scientific and technical issues into moral, cultural, and ideological debates.
Rumor is that which spreads very fast. Someone who does not know shouldn't provide information for you.
Join Ifeanyi Ugoke as he engages seasoned experts, scientists, and other relevant stakeholders on agricultural biotechnology on Thursdays, 10:05 a.m. on Vision FM 92.1 Abuja. Agricultural biotechnology, a sure way to food security in Nigeria.
Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Glad to know that you are still tuned to the program. Prof, there are confined field trials going on in Nigeria, as you have rightly pointed out. How best can these scientists be encouraged to continue their exploits in this cutting-edge technology?
Thank you very much. I think we must appreciate our scientists that are involved in the confined field trials that you have mentioned. And some of the confined field trials that come to mind is the confined field trials on cowpea, which is currently going on at the Institute of Agricultural Research in the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Now, I am particular with the fact that we have to commend our scientists, because our scientists have tried a lot to secure grants from mainly international organizations to be able to achieve these feats. And I think the area where we pay a lot of concern as a society is how our government is unable to join forces in supporting these kind of initiatives. We want our government to sponsor research that can promote this technology, because the effort of our scientists that is currently ongoing is mainly supported by international research systems and then some private organizations. And we believe that our government can do better than they are currently doing to be able to sustain this technology among our scientists. This technology has come to stay globally, and our scientists cannot just be watching. So for our few scientists that have taken the bull by the horn and are into it through the engagement of so many international partners, we commend them and we encourage others to join in seeing how we can help in sustaining our food security system using this technology.
That will take us to the next area of interest, and that is area of fortification of crops with essential nutrients. Is it possible to fortify crops using this technology?
Thank you very much. It is very possible. All that you will need to do again is you will be interested in a gene that will confer the particular trait that you are interested in. For example, you could be interested in adding protein into a maize variety. Ordinarily, maize does not have protein. So if it's a biofortified maize will now have protein, and you will just need to identify the particular gene of interest which has protein and introduce it into the maize variety. You could also do it into cassava. Cassava is purely starch, carbohydrate. You can biofortify it by introducing a protein or a vitamin. So the biofortification could be minerals, it could be essential elements, and it could be anything that will increase the value addition of a particular crop. And then all that you need to do is engage the gene of interest and insert it, and that crop will end up. So it is a process that it is practicable, has been used, and our scientists even locally are making great strides in attempting to be able to insert those genes into our local and staple crops.
There are fears expressed in some quarters that GMOs are not safe for human consumption. How true is this fear?
The fear is actually based on a lot of movements that are against genetically modified organisms, and it's not limited to Nigeria alone. It's a global crusade, and there are people who don't believe in the safety of GMOs just based on unconfirmed scientific evidences. But scientifically, it has been proven that genetically modified foods are safe. But the anti-movements will continue to tell you that GM foods have the tendency of causing cancers and what have you. They are carcinogenic and so on and so forth. But as a scientist, we are very proud to tell Nigerians that as patriotic Nigerians, we do not want to join issues with those GM groups. Rather, we want to promote the development of our food security, which cannot be met by the conventional breeding. And there is every reason scientifically within the purview of the current knowledge in science that has confirmed to us that all crops and animals that are produced through genetic modification are safe for human consumption. There is no scientific evidence anyway in the whole world. There is no scientific evidence that gives a picture of some food safety disagreement on the use of genetically modified foods. So Nigerians are very safe to use GM crops, use GM animals, and even GM organisms in general as food without any fear.
Thank you, Prof, for sharing your thoughts on the program. This is where we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program, Agricultural Biotechnology in Focus, on Vision 92.1 FM Abuja. Keep a date with us the same time next week for another interesting edition. I am Ifeanyi Ugoke.
Are you worried about the high import bill on food? Does Nigeria have the potential to produce enough food for her citizens? The deployment of agricultural biotechnology has the potential to tackle the challenge of poor yield, pest infestation, disease attack, drought, and other environmental challenges. Biotechnology in Focus is a program designed to enlighten you on the benefits of application of modern science in agriculture as against the misleading information against the technology. Join Ifeanyi Ugoke as he engages seasoned experts, scientists, and other relevant stakeholders on agricultural biotechnology on Thursdays, 10:05 a.m. on Vision FM 92.1 Abuja. Agricultural biotechnology, a sure way to food security in Nigeria.
The land is green.